In this video, I'll be covering how to make these super simple modular magnetic signposts. Make signs that say anything and change them out to fit the situation. So let's jump in. For the first style of post, I'm going to cut these dowel rods down to about 1 3/4 inches before I take my pin vise and drill 2 shallow holes into the post. Feel free to make the post as tall as you want and to put the holes on different sides if you want, if you're trying to have a post that seems more chaotic or haphazard like this one. After I got the holes drilled out, I'm simply going to add a touch of super glue and drop in some of these small 3mm by 1mm magnets into each slot. Then I'm going to glue the bottoms to a 3mm by 9mm magnet so that they have good grab onto my magnetic battle boards and can be knocked over or the table can be hit without them falling over. This step is optional, but for the alternative style, if you don't have some kind of magnetic base going on, you're likely going to need a much larger base to stop it from tipping over. Lastly, I'm going to build out the base with just a little bit more super glue and then add baking soda around the magnet so that I can then later add flocking and grit to it and tie it into the grasslands. After I have the base built out, I'm going to go ahead and sand these just a little bit before I move on to making the signs for these posts. My signs are made out of 1/8 inch balsa wood that I shaped with my knife and roughed up the back to make them a little less perfect looking. And in order to make the signs magnetic, I took small strips of this metal that I have left over from making my modular battle board, and using my snips, I cut some small squares off. Then I used my miniature pliers and bent 2 of the corners up. After that, I simply pressed them down into place and sealed them in with a dot of super glue. If you don't have cookie sheet scraps like I do, then the lids of canned goods can work, but I found that the metal is a bit thicker and it's harder to bend. Now I'm going to move on to the second style of signpost that I'm making here. And again, for this one, you're going to need wooden dowels. You can use dowels of different heights and different lengths than I chose to do, but I cut these ones here to 1 7/8 and 1 5/8 in length. For these signposts, I decided to mortise the 2 beams together simply because I think it looks better. So I'm going to line them up where I want them and then take my knife and cut a line into each side so that I can follow it. Then using my knife like a chisel, I'm gonna go ahead and carve out those slots. If you don't wanna do it this way, you really don't have to. Feel free to do it any other way you want. I did it this way for aesthetics only, and I don't think that the strength of the bond is gonna come into play for the signpost. Then I'm gonna add a magnetic base to the bottom of these ones as well. And for this style post, it really does make all the difference on whether or not it's gonna stand up or not. Next, I'm gonna drill 2 more holes into the underside of the short part of these signposts. Then I'm gonna add 2 more magnets so that they will hold up the sign. These signs are made from the same balsa wood and shaped in the same way, but where it's different is how I connected them to the magnets. For this style, I'm gonna use jewelry components. Just some simple chain and these pieces here that I honestly don't know the name of, but they seem similar to me as an eye bolt, and that's basically how I'm gonna be using it in this project. So I'm gonna snip off the excess of these signposts and then press them into the top of the balsa wood on each sign. Then I'll remove it, pry open the eye, and slip in a bit of the chain before crimping it back shut, adding a dot of super glue, and pressing it down back into place. These eye bolts are not magnetic, but the chain is, so both components were necessary for me. I also didn't want the chain to hang down super far, but that is personal preference, and you can feel free to do it however you desire. When it comes to painting, we all have our own taste in colors and style, and normally I like to use darker wood tones, but I felt like using something with a bit more reddish tones in it for this project. So I simply base coated these in what's called brown oxide, and then I used my typical oil washes after that. Then I added grit to the bases and painted it in the same dirt tones that I've been using for all my grasslands. Add a little bit of flocking to the bottom of these signposts and then they're done. These are a small, quick craft that can be knocked out in a whole batch in just a few hours, which sometimes is honestly just for the best. And I'd like to thank all my amazing patrons, especially Michael and Natalie the Murphy Destroyer. Your guys' support means the world to me, so thank you. If you're still wondering why I installed magnets to the bottoms of these signposts, then go ahead and check out my last video on the modular magnetic battle board. And until next time, keep all your fantasy fantastic.